my composition, how I'm going to turn that into a full-scale design, nice and neatly drawn, so that I can turn it into a painting. So the first thing I'm going to do is a grid system. And a grid system is a really good strategy just to help work out where I'm going to place everything so that the composition of my sketch is the same as the composition as my final. You can do it really mathematically, you can measure it, you can divide it by halves and quarters and eighths and sixteenths and however many times you need to make it as detailed as you want to make it. I prefer to do a smoother system where I look at my rectangle that I've sketched onto. I'm going to divide it roughly into threes, 1, 2, 3, just making sure that the space between them look relatively even. Do the same at the bottom, and I'm going to mark out some rough guidelines. Now, always with art, we don't have to make our artwork perfect. We're just trying to make it look pleasing to the eye. So this distance here between the gaps, what we're going to try and replicate up along the side. So rough measurement, it looks about the same, mark it out. 1, 2, 3, 4 for me. Mark it out on the other side. And sketch those lines across. And what I've got here is just a real rough grid that gives me a bit of a guide of where I'm going to place my objects. To now draw it on to my full scale design, I need to do this same grid. So I'm going to scale it up to the size of the paper. I can be a little bit more mathematical now, so I've got 3 grids along the bottom, so I can measure across the bottom of my piece of paper and divide that by 3. I can also still use my eyes and just do a bit of a guide. It's about thirds there. And I can get my ruler at this point and draw it up a little bit neater. Now, if you drew yours and you don't think it looks right, erase it, start again. There's no point keeping a grid that doesn't work. So there is my vertical grids, and now I need to divide up the left side. It's fifths. So I'm going to take that measurement roughly, move it over to this side, mark it off, and mark up the side of my page. Now you might find that your original square that you drew is not the same dimensions, so it doesn't look as rectangular as your final A4 piece, in which case you may need to modify your design. So I have my grids in place. I'm now going to go to my drawing and I'm going to work out where I'm going to sketch and what I'm going to sketch in. And the way that I do this is pretty simple. I'm going to focus in on a part. So grid 1, 2, 3 here. If I look at grid 1, I really only have just the edge of that band across it. So I'm going to go over to my grid. I'm going to look closely at grid 1. I'm going to look at where the lines match on my grid 1. So there's my grid 1. So you'll see here that the lines intersect the top right corner just below a quarter of the way out. So I mark those points on my grid line, and then all I need to do is match them up. So I go across to the next 2 points, and where they match across the lines, and I can see that they go just a little bit over halfway. So just a little bit over halfway, just a little bit over halfway, and I match those 2 points. Zoom into my second square. I can see that I've got the lines that I've already drawn here. Don't go across the other side, and they only come about halfway along. So I'm going to go back to my drawing to grid 2. I'm going to think about halfway along. This is where my shape is going to end. And I'm going to repeat this process, and I'm just going to go from my each grid square to the enlarged space. I'm only going to look at the square that I'm drawing on. I work out where do the shapes meet the cross lines, mark out that point, and then I'm going to sketch in my shape. Because I'm only looking at squares, it's a little bit easier to get everything nice and accurate because I'm not getting overloaded by all the space. And I can just focus in on the parts. Now looking at the way that mine looks enlarged, I can see I've got lots of empty space. So I might spend a little bit of time now making my final artwork look the best that I want it to look.